Mr. Kearsey, firstly, thank you for the interview. I believe this is a first for Jersey. Certainly, it's a first for Citizens Media to interview a Jurat candidate, and we appreciate it. Can you tell us why you're standing for election as Jurat?
Yeah, fundamentally, I feel that there's a very quaint way of doing things in Jersey where people are appointed to authority, particularly in the justice system, from a very narrow band of society. And quite often legal disputes and the role of the Jurat needs to reflect empathy with a broad band of the island and all across the island. And I feel as though I have a very good knowledge of Jersey, a good understanding of it, a good understanding of sort of the penal system and fairness, and also perhaps mental health issues and social issues that affect people that quite often need disputes resolving or sentences passed in terms of or damages in relation to how they've been on the end of rough justice or that kind of situation.
What sets you aside from the others? You say you come from a different band, you're not from the normal pool of Jurats. What's different about you than the rest of the Jurats?
Comprehensive school educated, very proud of it, very good school in Cheshire. I have a large amount of Jersey family. I've worked extremely hard at my education and very knowledgeable person. I had a lot of experience with the finance industry where a lot of the cases take place. I can understand why people commit crime, whether they have the sort of mens rea and the understanding in their mind as to what they're doing. I know a lot of people who struggle with mental illness. I also think I look at the newspapers and read a lot and don't necessarily feel that sometimes the justice system is serving or penalising people enough relative to their circumstances and the crimes they've committed.
So what would you, I know in a bio I read of yours, you quoted the Carswell review and the Clothier review, in as much that there needs to be like a separation of powers. Is that what between the legislator and the judiciary, is that your sort of...
Yeah, that's not really the role of the Jurat, but I mean I have some personal views on that, and I would say that certainly the reports you refer to are very integral with ensuring that justice is administered away from the government and the legal system and the government are separated, partly because of the accountability of government, the accountability of power centres in the island is that the networks tend to protect. I mean, one of the things I feel very strongly about is that whistleblowers should be protected and compensated for acts they have had to undertake in the interest of integrity and justice for those they're in a position to know about and want to protect. The island's totally antiquated in that regard. Be that either people in the finance industry, in child protection apparatus, or just generally in the workplace with fraud or those types of situations. They're just not protected. They're castigated from society. And really they should stand with their head held high and be considered those with the most integrity and extremely brave as well in terms of what they do.
Well, as we know, the Jersey government hasn't got a whistleblowing policy, and well, we've all seen what happens to whistleblowers over here. Because I was reading a piece on, now what's his name again? Jeffrey Nice, QC. Now he basically said that the Jurats are there basically to rubber stamp what the commissioner, the bailiff, the deputy bailiff says, that they're not there to be, that if you like, they're paid from the neck down. They're just there to agree with the bailiff. Now, is that how you see it?
Yeah, they're not paid. They're not actually decision makers in law. They don't actually particularly make sort of developmental cases or statute or that kind of situation where law is decided. They kind of then come along afterwards and decide upon damages and decide upon sentences for people where points of law have already been understood, and tend to feed in from information. Some of that information they feed into is, in all fairness to a small island, reasonable in most situations, but when you have the overriding powers of individuals who are not elected above them, and that specifically have conflicts of interest, i.e. sort of being the advisor to the government and advisor whether a government is accountable at the same time, and a specific reference to sort of the bailiff and the Attorney General.
The election process for Jurats, to my way of thinking, is pretty much an old boys' network, a bit of a closed shop.
Well, the Electoral College, yeah, and I take your point about that. I mean, I would say that actually having a commission, which is similar to other systems around the world, is a lot more beneficial. I mean, in terms of knowing who your supporters are and then actually having to decide upon, a sentence or damages for when they've represented an individual in court, it's very open to influence. I think you always take into account that you're always going to get conflicts of interest or influences or people when you're having to make tough decisions in the island. But that's why I feel I could sort of stand proud in that even if I do know somebody or they're a supporter, I'm more in the interest of fairness and justice. But not everybody has the ability to do that or even separate that in their own mind. So, I mean, the system needs to look at a commission that appoints jurats, and I feel the Electoral College is a little bit antiquated. Problem is, therefore, those people are voting for me and they wouldn't want to relinquish their power. One of the big themes of sort of managing one's own life these days, as I was told once, you don't give your power away too easily, and they would be loath to relinquish it. But I think there's a lot of lawyers that would pride themselves on in the interests of justice, and I often remember going to a talk with Helena Kennedy QC at Oxford Brookes University and talking about sort of human rights issues and not actually being influenced by others in the decision making. There is far too much of that in Jersey, so a commission would be the way forward. I think if you could put a jurat's role next to an election as well, it's an important part. It's the equivalent of a magistrate in the UK, so that would be another option. I don't know whether administratively that is practical, but I certainly would say a commission is positive for the future. Yeah, I mean, to sort of wrap up, I believe that kind of fairness and justice is really important for all parts of society, and quite often that's something that the power is vested in those that kind of therefore protect authority in decisions. I mean, you can go back to sort of the child protection mechanisms and apparatus in the island. It seems that the third sector and sport and schools are leading the way in that, and yet, can you argue the same as in government? There's still this denial that any sort of perpetration has gone on in the island, even though you've got a massive investigation going on and commission and review looking into what's happened historically in Jersey. I'd say the other thing is kind of sort of whistleblowers in finance and fair treatment in finance, fair treatment in employment law. Number of areas that really I find the island very short-sighted in realising it could lead the way and be an example to others through some of the bad experiences that it's had in terms of being, a world leader. It's a recognised quasi-independent country, if you want, and we should be proud, and yet it seems to be an overarching protection mechanism that denies much of this goes on. And to make it a safer, equitable and fair community where people can be proud to live here in all areas of society that have been impacted by these situations can hold their heads high on the basis that honesty and integrity prevails.